Hello and welcome to the Unconventional Podcast with Grace Hardy. Today we have Hannah from the Accountancy Hub, so welcome.
Thank you, good to be here.
You did take a bit of an unconventional route to becoming an accountant and a business owner. You had a career change at 27 from the BBC into accounting. How was that thought process? How did that come about?
So I did a history degree at the University of York, didn't know what to do, just knew that I enjoyed studying history. And then I had a brief stint as a paralegal, and I ended up working at the BBC in a business and legal commercial role. Absolutely loved the BBC, still go on holiday every single year with some friends from there.
Oh, that's so nice.
And it was a great job, but I realised if I wanted to progress, I would have to be a lawyer, and I didn't have any formal legal training or qualifications. So I looked at my options. The GDL was really expensive. I think it was like 10 grand to do that law conversion. And I realised I actually didn't love the legal parts of my job. I preferred the business negotiation side of things. So I started looking at business qualifications, and that's where accountancy came up as being a great qualification for business in general. And then I realised you could do it as part of an apprenticeship. So like you know, it would be paid for by the company. So it just seemed like a better option for me all round. So yeah, at the age of 27, I left the BBC and joined a graduate scheme at one of the big professional services companies and worked in internal audit and studied to be a chartered accountant.
That's amazing. And how did you sort of find that transition from legal into accounting?
The big culture change was going from BBC into, the corporate world. It was very different. I'm not sure if it's still me, if I'm completely honest. I'm not a very corporate person, but what I did love is how ambitious people are, how intelligent and hardworking everyone is. And so the drive was amazing. But yeah, definitely a bit of a culture shock.
Yeah, 100%. Did you have to take sort of a salary cut when you went from working at the BBC to then just going on a graduate scheme?
I did. I think I started on a salary of like 28k, which was much less, but I thought it's worth it. I'm going to have a professional qualification at the end of this, more earning potential, and potentially a more interesting career.
Amazing. And some of your study was during COVID. How do you think that affected your grad scheme?
So much. Having to sit exams at home. We went from having physical books to having e-books.
Don't, because I couldn't, and I struggled so much with that when they came and they were like, everything's going to be online. Because obviously I'm dyslexic and I can't work online. I have to write notes down, and I'm a very visual learner. I fought very hard to have paper copies, but if you didn't have that diagnosis, like you didn't have at the time,
no, they
just force you to have ebooks.
I was only diagnosed with dyslexia when I had one exam left of the 15 exams, but I was so stressed when they said that, they were moving from books to ebooks, and I now know why. Like, I was just so worried about it, because it's a completely different way to learn. And as you say, you can't write things down, you can't put all your sticky tabs on there, and your colour system.
Yeah, all of it.
COVID was difficult, and it's one of the reasons I established Accountancy Hub, because I felt like all accountancy qualifications were going through the same thing. We were all suddenly at home sitting exams, and there wasn't anywhere I thought that it brought us all together as a community. So that's why, as part of Accountancy Hub, is an online community forum.
That's amazing, and I think it's such an important thing to have, because when I was in my apprenticeship, there was hardly any of us, and one girl left after the first year, and then it was just two of us, and it was so difficult because I'd been pushed back because during COVID I couldn't sit my dyslexia assessment because you had to take another one after sixth form for it to qualify, and so he went straight on to ACA. And I was behind because of this dyslexia assessment delay, and so then I went on to AAT. So we weren't even studying the same thing either, so we couldn't ask questions to each other because we weren't learning the same things. Plus it was all remote, and so that's so difficult. I started in 2020, and so we couldn't really go into the office to learn from our superiors or managers or anything. So I remember me and Taylor used to sit on a Teams call or FaceTime going, do you know what's going on? She'd say no. She went, do you know what's going on? And I went, not a clue, because there's only so many times you can message someone on Microsoft Teams being like, hi, you free? I'm really confused.
Honestly, I feel so sorry for anyone who started a new job during COVID. Like, I honestly don't know how you learn to do the role. Because luckily I'd joined before that, so I was sort of comfortable-ish with the role by the time that COVID happened. But yeah, that sounds like a nightmare.
It was, but we survived. We trooped through, so it was okay. With your exams, what sort of techniques did you then use to combat it all being online?
I'm not sure I did have any technique really. I just had to go with the flow. To be honest, virtual learning wasn't so bad for me because often they'd be recorded so I could go back and rewatch a class. So when I was struggling with the fast pace of lessons, that actually really helped me. It was better than being in person. And having notes sent over to you. Yeah, so that was actually way better for my dyslexia that I didn't realise I had at that time. But I just think all the change that happened with COVID, and also the fact like I had to buy new equipment to sit exams at home. So
like what?
Like a separate keyboard for my laptop, because my laptop screen had to be like down or something, so I couldn't type on my laptop. Have a separate keyboard, and a webcam, because you needed to have a webcam on you at all times during the exam, and your phone camera on you. And there was like a special exam app, so they were kind of filming you from all angles.
Feels like a bit like Big Brother, but for exams.
Yeah. And then obviously you've got to make sure your house is quiet and no one's going to ring the doorbell during
And the
exam.
Wi-Fi connection is good.
And the Wi-Fi connection's good. We had an actual sign we put on our front door. This is up home on the edge of the Peak District. My mum put a sign on the door saying, "Be quiet, exam in progress." It was just like ridiculous.
That's so sweet of her though.
I know.
It was a nightmare. My dogs bark every time someone walks past the door in my little village at home. So postman, dogs barking, so noisy. And it was a nightmare. It was such a challenge, but we've touched on it briefly. You got diagnosed much later on at 30. How did you feel when you got that?
Well, it wasn't the accountancy exams that made me think I had dyslexia, because I just thought, everyone struggles with these exams, they're pretty difficult. It was actually something at work where I was doing a very intense internal audit review, and we were looking at these key financial controls, and we had this huge document. And I sometimes couldn't see the difference between some of the controls. I would read them and read them and read them. And they were only slightly different in my defence, but I could not see where they were different. And I thought, I just don't think that's normal. So then that's when I spoke to a colleague. They said, "Oh, maybe you're dyslexic." And then they offered to pay for an assessment.
That's amazing.
And during the whole, so it's like a full day virtual assessment, and then you're sent some tests in the post as well. And I was thinking, I'm smashing these tests. There's no way that I'm dyslexic.
What sort of tests were they?
So it's verbal reasoning, it's reading, spelling, all sorts of things. Right at the end of the day, before she'd had a chance to kind of look at all the results, she said, "I'm confident in saying that you are neurodiverse, you're dyslexic, and I'll be recommending you have the maximum 25% extra time." And I just burst into tears.
Oh, bless you.
Because I had one exam left at that point, and I just thought, oh my gosh, imagine if I'd had that for the whole qualification.
Do you think it would have made your life much easier?
It would have done, yeah, because I was working so hard. I was passing exams and it was fine, but I used all of my annual leave on studying. I knew I was working harder than everyone else, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's so difficult. I studied for the first 2 ACA exams before I got moved to AAT, and I struggled so much on those because those multiple choice questions, they're there to catch you out. They're not there to be easy. And so every single one of those is so similar, and there's just such niche differences. And I found it's extremely difficult to pick up on those, and I really struggled.
They're horrible, those early exams, because as you say, you question yourself, because you think, oh, I think that's the answer, but wait, that's pretty close, or that it could be that one. So you've got to be really, really confident in the content.
I agree, but you qualified, which is amazing. So congratulations.
Thank you.
How did that feel?
Incredible, so great. And I think I learned like how determined I am. I wouldn't change the journey at all. I'm so happy that I'm qualified now. Yeah, I was just really proud of myself.
Why did you start Accountancy Hub, and what's the mission of it? If you're here because you're interested in a career in finance, there's no better place to turn than AAT. I should know, that's how I started out. Every year, thousands of school leavers, finance professionals, and career changers choose to study AAT qualifications. They come out with a qualification that employers value, increased salary potential, and a wide range of career progression opportunities. Did you know a large number of FTSE 100 CEOs come from an accountancy background? You can study at home or in the classroom. Depending on your circumstances, you may be able to get your studies funded. You can also earn and learn in the workplace as an accounting apprentice. Find out more about careers in finance at aat.org.uk/unconventional.
As I said, it was during lockdown when I thought there's so much going on across all qualifications. I wish we could all talk to each other. So that's the community forum aspect aspect. Also, I thought there needed to be more support around well-being. So I've partnered with various well-being and lifestyle brands, and they're offering discounts to my members. So it's a membership platform and you pay a monthly subscription. Then there's the inclusion side of things. So I am an inclusion consultant, and when I was studying the ACA, I ended up kind of informally mentoring a few other people that were coming up behind me and struggling with exams. They all ended up leaving, all of them, and they all had other things going on, whether that was a chronic physical illness, or they were struggling with their mental health, or they were parents and they were studying, or they were neurodiverse. And I just thought, if all these people leave, we're not going to have an inclusive finance industry at all. We're going to have all the same people in the finance accounting world. So yeah, inclusion is a big part of the website. So offering support and advice to people that might have other things going on while they're doing their exams.
I think that's so true, because everyone is a human being at the end of the day. And you've also got a podcast called Human Tea, because accountants are human tea, which I think is a brilliant tagline. But we are all just people at the end of the day, and we do go through things. I went through awful things during my apprenticeship, and some of them did affect my exams. I failed an exam because I was going through something really, really awful and horrible at the time, and it really, really affected me. And sometimes it's so difficult to leave your personal life at the door and walk in and take that exam, because you've got too much going on in your head. I can't even imagine what it's like with kids, because that just, I'm sure, amplifies that 10 times over.
Yeah, there was one person I was speaking to who they had their exams, 3 exams in September. So they knew they were going to be studying over the school holidays. So they asked if they could have their books in advance, so that they could basically start studying way earlier than the rest of their cohort, knowing that they wouldn't be able to do much revision during those kind of months before. And it was such a struggle for them to get those books. And it took such a long time. I think in the end they did actually get them, so that was a huge success. But I just thought, why is it that difficult? Like, the books are there, they must be there, and some people need a different schedule.
I think that's so true. For me, I got my books early because of my dyslexia diagnosis, but then I sat and I thought, there's so many undiagnosed people with neurodiversity. There's some people that are really struggling and have personal circumstances. They should be very much listened to as well, equally, because everyone studies in different ways and everyone has different pain points. But I think inclusion in the accountancy world is really important, because the FCA came out with the report that actually you sent me and flagged up to me, with the most ridiculous name in the whole world, Sexism in the City. And I was
like, that title.
I was like, is this great or really just quite corny? But I read it, and if you haven't read the report, I really suggest you go out and Google it and read it, because it's actually quite staggering. The gender pay gap in the accountancy sector is terrifying. It's massive. And sexual harassment and sexual assault is still very prevalent in the accounting world as well, and that needs to stop. And I think that also starts with inclusion. What you're doing, I think, is so important. So what steps as an inclusion consultant do you make sure are given so that people stay in their roles?
It's a lot of just study advice and practical advice. You know, speak to your people manager, tell them the situation you're in. You know, like this woman I was talking about, if you need to have your book sent to you early, make that happen. Think ahead, think a year ahead. Look at your annual leave for the year. Do you need to have some of that to study? A lot of it is just planning. I have a support email service, which is for anyone who's struggling with exams, but also just in the corporate world in general. You know, I think there are still a lot of cultural issues, as you've touched upon. So if I can help anyone in any way, you know, I will.
And I think that's so needed, especially because we've talked about this before. The rules for exams are getting stricter and stricter and stricter. I was very lucky that in my corporate role they weren't as strict, but I remember getting an offer from KPMG for my apprenticeship, and I wanted to find someone else who had done the same thing to decide, because I had a couple of offers and I was just trying to weigh them up so I could make the best decision for myself. And I spoke to him, and he had dyslexia, and he said the support wasn't great, and he failed 2 exams, and on the second exam he got fired. And he left and he went to a smaller firm and finished his qualification, and he was so much happier there. And for me, with someone with quite bad dyslexia, I thought, right, that's probably not the best place for me. So I picked a different firm with more of a people culture.
I have to say I completely disagree with some of the exam policies that these companies have. And I read an article in the Times recently that said that some of these firms, they kind of predict that 60% of their graduates will leave within 3 years. And I just think they're spending so much money on hiring, inducting, training those individuals. To lose 60%, it doesn't make financial sense to me. But also so many of those people will be diverse in some way or another and can really contribute to the finance industry. So I think it's a shame. Yeah, I'm not a fan of those exam policies.
No, and I think they do need to be more lenient. I understand where they're coming from, because they want people that can progress quickly, qualify, and then be promoted to assistant manager or whatever the role may be in that firm. But at the same time, I think accounting needs to move with the times. I think diverse people bring so much to the table. They're so creative and they think outside the box, and they're so good at doing that. And so it might be that they're not great at revising or doing multiple choice questions, but the actual work they're really quite good at, and that I think needs to be recognised. But the exam policy means that they're being basically chucked out of the firm too early.
Definitely. And I think, as you say, these exams are very different from actually doing the job. So you can have people that are absolutely brilliant at the work, but are just struggling with the exams. And why should they be sort of chucked out the profession because of that?
How do you think the well-being of an individual contributes to the success of their exams?
I honestly think if your well-being is poor and you're working full-time and studying full-time, your chances of success are very, very slim. You know, if your well-being is not where it should be, you might not have the motivation to even open a book and study. You know, if you're sleep deprived, you're not going to be able to take in information well, you know, memorise it, understand it properly. So this is why I'm so passionate about well-being, because, yeah, if all of that isn't there and you're not eating properly, sleeping properly, having water, doing exercise, you're going to find it so much more difficult to be an accountancy apprentice.
I think that's so true. What are the crucial top tips you would tell someone that is probably struggling with their well-being?
Lean on your support network. So speak to friends, speak to family, speak to your people manager. You know, if you're really struggling, speak to a GP, obviously, a trained professional. Also reach out to Accountancy Hub if you like. And we'll support in any way or direct you to the right person. But yeah, just lean on your network.
I think that's so crucial, but I think that applies to business owners as well, because you are now a business owner as well as a chartered accountant. And I think for me, when I started, water decided to go out the window. Eating 3 meals a day wasn't happening. Getting sleep also just wasn't happening. And I think I was terrible at the beginning for time management. I'd put all these meetings in my diary and then go, oh my God, I've got no space for lunch. Or I'd sit there for 5 hours in meetings and not get a water bottle, so I wasn't drinking. And another thing I found was I can't stop thinking now about work. And so when I used to try to go to sleep, I couldn't sleep. I'd just lie there. So I have to make like notes on my phone about things I need to do tomorrow. Yeah. And then I'd have to put like sleep music on to distract my brain from thinking about work. So how has your brain changed adjusting from going into the corporate world to being a business owner?
Yeah, I have found it very difficult. As you say, there isn't really a cut-off. It felt like there was a cut-off when you're in a corporate job, but now I just think about work, as you said, all the time. And I think as business owners, you know, everything is on you. Everything is your responsibility. And if you're already the kind of person who puts a lot of pressure on themselves, that's where I find the eating and drinking goes out the window, because you're like, oh, I haven't done that task, therefore I need to finish this before, this might just be me, but I'm like, before I can like go and eat or go and drink.
Yeah.
I put that much pressure on myself, which is not healthy at all. But then at the same time, being master of my own time now, I mean, I'm not as busy as I used to be in a corporate job at all. And I found that a weird change. So, you know, I can get up later. I can start work at 10 or half 10 if I want to. And I shouldn't really feel guilty about that. You know, that's okay. Yeah, I can work later if I need to. You know, just being master of my own schedule is quite an adjustment, which I am coming to terms with now, but at first I found that really difficult.
But I think also that's such a nice thing about being a business owner. However, I think there's a very fine line because of social media. I found when I started, for me, I'm just a girl. I need 10 hours sleep every night, otherwise I'm actually just a horrible human being and I can't function. My mum and my sister will happily agree with me. If we have to wake up early for anything, I'm in a terrible mood and no one wants to be near me. So it's really crucial that I get those 10 hours of sleep a night. But I kept seeing all these people, I wake up at 5 a.m. and I go, that's not me. I can't do that. No. But sometimes it feels like there's so much pressure because of what people put on social media that you need to do that too.
I literally did think, maybe I should be getting up at 5.
That's what I thought. I tried. Those lovely letters after my name, MAAT. That's an internationally recognised professional status in accounting and finance. It tells employers and clients that I've reached a high standard of education and experience. It's not just the designatory letters. AAT full membership brings a whole host of benefits, including free support helplines, CPD resources, and access to exclusive rewards. If, like me, you want to be your own boss, there's also the option to become an AAT licensed member and get tailored support to help you run your own accounting business or bookkeeping business. Find out more about different AAT membership options at aat.org.uk/unconventional. Awful. I tried once to get up early, go to the gym before I had breakfast, come back, eat breakfast, work. I was like, I'm going to be that girl. Okay, I wake up, I get in my gym clothes, I go, oh my god, I'm so tired. I get back into bed in my gym clothes, I fall asleep for another 2 hours, and then I wake up at like 9 a.m. Get out my gym clothes, have breakfast and go to work.
Yeah, I mean, I am not a morning person, like you, I'm just not. And I think that's okay. Like, if you work better in the evening, or like even like late into the night, use that time when you're like really awake and like productive. I know that if I got up at 5, I just wouldn't be effective for the first 3 hours anyway.
No, and then I need to go to bed at like 5 p.m.
Maybe I shouldn't be a business owner.
But it's about being on your own time, which I think is such a nice freedom to have.
Yeah.
Because I'm really much more productive between like 2 and 9 p.m. That's like my peak hours. And in corporate that doesn't work. You have to work 9 to 5 and then you're done and then you revise. And that just didn't work for me. And so I'm so happy I get to do that as a business owner. But with all these pros comes cons. And so what do you think have been your biggest challenges setting up your own business?
It's just learning as you go along. I don't know if you found it the same, but I was surprised at how easy it was to actually just establish a company. Going onto Company's House. It was just 5 minutes. Oh, I have a company now.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to build a website and get an accountant. I am an accountant, so it hasn't been too difficult to kind of look after my accounts, but I still definitely wanted an accountant. Surprisingly easy, but it's more the stuff around like working to your own schedule and looking after yourself.
Yeah.
And the constant roller coaster of, oh, there's something really exciting that's going to happen. Oh, a deal is about to happen. Oh, no, it's not. And then you're like, oh. And you're like, oh, it's going to happen. Oh, no, it's not. And it's constantly like that, like successes, failures. But all of it is just so exciting because it's all of your own making.
I would so agree. And I also think what's so nice is that the sky's the limit. I've done things I would never have dreamed of in my wildest dreams. I've been to places I'd never thought I'd be. And that's just because when you're self-employed, I think very much the only limits that you have are the ones that you put on yourselves. And as soon as you change your mindset and alleviate those, anything's possible.
Definitely. And it can constantly evolve. So, I might have set out to do one thing, but I'll adapt and change depending on what happens. So, yeah, just a constant learning curve, but super exciting.
I think it's so exciting. And I wake up every day now and I'm actually excited. Like this whole week I've been like, oh my god, I get to shoot so many podcasts this week. I'm so excited. And it's so much fun. And it's also the flexibility for us in the accountancy world to go to like accounting events, because I don't think necessarily I got the opportunity to do that in the corporate world. I'd never gone to an Accountex before, for example. But as a business owner, I know I've blocked out my calendar and I'm going and I'm really excited. And I feel like hopefully it's a great networking opportunity and I'm gonna meet loads of people and go to loads of really interesting talks, and I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, me too. I honestly didn't even know Accountex existed until I started this company. And then people were like, oh, you're going to Accountex? I was like, what's that? But it's a huge thing in the calendar, isn't it?
I think it's probably one of the biggest ones. I think it is the biggest one. And then you've got DAS, you've got FAB, which is the Festival of Accountants and Bookkeepers. But I was like, I'm going to go. I went to my first one before I started my business, actually. And I'm going this year. And I'm on a panel. And I was like, that's sick.
That is so exciting. I can't wait to see you.
I know. I bought a power suit as well. I was like, I'm going to give it my all.
The Zara Blue Power Suit.
The Zara Blue Power Suit.
Can't wait to see it.
And so you decided to set up as a limited company and not as a sole trader. Was that ever taught to you in school?
No, definitely not. All that stuff that you learn doing the accountancy qualification, it's just so useful. And just tax bands and what happens with tax, that would be so useful to be taught at school. The reason I set up as a limited company rather than a sole trader is a lot of it was to do with prestige, actually, and how it looks. And I have been looking at investment, and often they prefer for you to be a company. So that was one of the main drivers for me, but also for tax efficiency reasons, you know, the fact that you can kind of pay yourself a small salary and take the rest of it in dividends. It can be more tax efficient. They were my reasons, but I don't think there necessarily is a right or a wrong. It just depends on
what you want, what your circumstances are. But a little tax tip for any business owners that are limited companies is you can take a small salary each month and you've got to keep it under the personal allowance, which is £12,570, and that amount is tax free. You don't have to pay any money on it, which is amazing. And then you can top yourself up in dividends, which are taxed at a lower percentage than the salary. And that is how you pay yourself in the most tax efficient way. And now I've all learned something. And I think it really should be taught in schools, like even just tax bands or personal allowances or trading allowances, because no one really knows what they mean unless they go online and they have a look for themselves. But I think even something like budgeting should be taught, because you can use that both in your personal life and in your business life.
Yeah, and forecasting. That would be brilliant as well. I honestly don't know why we're not taught this in school.
Honestly, I think it's such a shame, because it's so crucial, because everyone needs elements of finance in their life. Whether you're looking at your pay slip and trying to figure out if you're on the right tax code, for example. So most people are on the tax code 1257L. But sometimes, when I was 16, I was put on an emergency tax code. I didn't know what that looked like. I also didn't know what that meant. But I was put on it because I was 16 and things hadn't gone through properly or whatnot. So then I had to call HMRC and be like, hiya, how are you? I think I might have been put on the wrong tax code. And then I got money back. I got a little cheeky tax rebate and it was like £200. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm going to go to Pret and buy a sandwich. But it's really important that people know those things.
Yeah, it really, really is. And I mean, that's part of what you're doing as well, right? Financial education. And I see what you're doing on social media and it's really, really helpful.
Oh, well, thank you. How have you found social media?
I've had a lot of help from you, actually, which has been brilliant on TikTok. TikTok is the one platform I really don't understand, and I've only recently joined, having set up my company. So it's, a corporate account, but I'm putting myself front and centre, which I'm not that comfortable with doing.
You're starting to grow your personal brand.
Exactly. I'm trying to grow a personal brand, and I am the company. It is just me, so why not? On Instagram, I'm also trying to do more of that. LinkedIn, trying to just be more consistent with what I'm posting and speaking about inclusion, accountancy, training and culture, because I'm still kind of doing inclusion and culture work on the side, helping organisations to be more inclusive and have better workplace cultures. So yeah, that kind of thought leadership piece is good as well. But it's hard work. It takes up a lot of time.
It does take up a lot of time and it is quite scary. But kudos to you, because you've started, and I honestly think that's the toughest thing. I mean, I've told you this. For the first 2 months of my business, I refused to put my face on social media because I didn't want to do it, and I was actually genuinely just terrified. I was so scared. And then I did it, and you get over that hump and you start posting consistently and things happen, which is amazing. And now I've started growing my personal brand.
Yeah, you've got to just not care what people think.
Yeah.
Don't you? I've seen that you've received quite horrible comments recently.
Oh my God. And do you know what? They're all from teenage boys and old men. And I'm just like, do you have nothing better to do with your time?
Yeah. Not nice. Not supportive.
Where are the supportive queens in my comments? That's what I want to know. I can't find them.
It's that thing, isn't it? I think, they're not there in person. They're sitting behind a screen.
Yeah.
And they're probably not like that in real life at all, but
they wouldn't say that to my face.
Yeah.
But also, I am so lucky to have such a supportive network around me. I had loads of other really nice messages from clients, from friends, from other business owners being like, I'm seeing this, but they are like, a lot of them work in social media. They're like, this is boosting your engagement, Grace. They were like, this is fabulous. And I was like, yeah, okay, thank you. My sister called me. She was like, you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. She was like, good, because they don't know what they're talking about. She was like, you're smashing it. And I was like, okay, thank you, August. I appreciate that. And so sometimes it didn't really get to me, but I was like, can you just stop now? It's actually just quite boring. But it's so nice to have such a supportive network around me, which I think is so helpful, especially as a business owner, because only other business owners can relate to what you're going through.
Yeah. And it makes me sad that you have to kind of, prove yourself. That's what it felt like when you were kind of battling those comments. You shouldn't have to. And yeah, I mean, you won't listen to them anyway. You'll just crack on.
I will, honestly. Power suit at the ready. I think you're doing such an amazing job. What does the future hold for Accountancy Hub and your podcast, Human 2?
Well, we're getting more and more exciting people on the podcast. You've been on the podcast recently.
I have been
Can't
on the
wait to release that
podcast.
one. We've recently had the president of the ACCA and M&A lead at Lad Bible.
Yeah, I saw that. That was sick. Well done.
Thank you. Coming up, we've got the MD of Education at the ICAW, and I'm really, really looking forward to that conversation because, I don't think I've ever spoken to anyone so senior at the ICAW before. And
good luck. You'll smash it.
If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll pose them to him. As for Accountancy Hub, I'm just building it bit by bit. Corporate clients are my main target, so I do have some individuals using the platform at the moment, and I'm supporting people who have failed exams, but it's really getting those corporate clients on board, and I'm speaking to 11 or 12 of them at the moment. I think it's always tricky to get your first big client.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone wants to be the first one, but someone has to be.
And then once they've done it, everyone else will follow. So
I'm in constant sales mode at the moment, and I'm also talking to training providers and the actual awarding bodies themselves, like the ACCA. So it's a very exciting time, lots of opportunity, and we'll just see what happens.
Well, I wish you the best of luck, and thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks, Grace.
Bye.
Bye.